Have you ever thought about what would happen in Earth's final hour? Like, not in a movie way, not the explosions and the heroes and the dramatic music. I mean, really thought about it. What would actually happen to you, to the people around you, to the world outside your window? Because here's the thing, most people assume it would look like chaos, riots, looting, every person for themselves. And that assumption is wrong. What actually happens is so much more surprising and honestly, so much more human. Let's talk about it. Okay, so imagine this. You wake up normal morning, you're making breakfast, scrolling your phone, half awake, and then your phone buzzes with an emergency alert. Not a weather warning, not a local Amber Alert, something different. The government just confirmed that an extinction-level event, something big enough to end all life on Earth, is going to hit in exactly 60 minutes. Now, what's the first thing you do? Most people say panic. Some say they'd grab their family and drive. Some say they'd just freeze completely. But here's what research actually tells us happens when people receive catastrophic news. The very first response isn't panic at all, it's disbelief. Think about it. Your brain has no category for the world ends in an hour. It's never had to process that before, so it just stalls. It reaches for something familiar and finds nothing. Back in 1980, when Mount St. Helens was about to erupt, scientists were begging people to evacuate. One 83-year-old man named Harry Truman, not the president, just a regular guy, refused to leave his home at the base of the volcano. He'd lived there 50 years. He knew those woods. He simply did not believe the mountain would hurt him. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't stupid. He was human. And that's exactly what would happen in the first few minutes after the announcement. Most people just wouldn't fully believe it. So let's say 20 minutes pass. The news is everywhere. Every channel, every phone, every screen. It's real. Now what? Here's where it gets really interesting. There's this idea, this really persistent idea, that when things get bad enough, people turn on each other. That civilization is just a thin layer of politeness sitting on top of something savage. You've seen it in movies 1,000 times. But sociologists, well, people who actually study how humans behave in disasters, have been quietly disproving this for decades. A researcher named Lee Clark spent years looking at real disasters, earthquakes, floods, building collapses, war zones, and what he found over and over again was the opposite of what movies show us. People help each other. Complete strangers share food. They pull people out of rubble. They form little spontaneous teams with no leader and no plan, and somehow it works. They go calm and focused in a way that normal life almost never asks of them. Clark called the savage disaster myth exactly that, a myth. So in the final hour, the highways fill up fast, but not with people running away, with people moving towards something. Toward home, toward their kids, toward that one person they've been meaning to call. Cell networks crash in the first few minutes. Too many calls at once, not emergency calls, personal calls, moms calling their sons, best friends, people calling someone they haven't spoken to in years to say the thing they never said. The internet floods with messages that may never be read, but people send them anyway. Now here's the part that really got me when I was researching this. In hospitals around the world, when the announcement goes out, some doctors and nurses don't leave. Not all of them, but enough. They stay with patients who can't move. Who can't make phone calls? Who would die alone in a hospital room if nobody chose to remain? Think about that for a second. With 60 minutes left on Earth, some people spend it sitting next to a stranger who needs them. That's not something a movie writes for background characters. It's just what some people are. And it's not just hospitals, firefighters stay at their stations. Power plant workers stay at their controls, keeping the lights on for as long as they can for people they'll never meet. The infrastructure of the world doesn't collapse all at once. It fades slowly as people leave their posts one by one. Substations go unmonitored. Signals drop. The lights across cities begin going out in waves, rolling slowly across time zones like a tide. And as the cities go dark, people go outside. Okay, this part is wild. When cities lose power, even just during regular blackouts, something happens that most people living in urban areas have literally never experienced. The stars come back. Light pollution is so constant in modern cities that most people under 30 have never seen a truly dark sky. The Milky Way is just a myth to them, a thing in pictures. When the power goes out across whole regions, those people look up and see something their ancestors saw every single night of their lives. Thousands of stars. The actual sky. In the final hour, with power fading across the planet, the sky would return everywhere at once. Same stars that sailors used to cross oceans. The same stars ancient people turned into stories. The same stars that have been up there the entire time, behind all our light, just there, waiting. So what does the last 10 minutes actually look like? Not for governments or the news, but for regular people. There's research on people who've been told they're terminally ill, people facing a real end with a real timeline. And what they describe consistently is something that sounds almost impossible until you hear it. A kind of peace. Not because things got better, but because all the noise finally stopped. The to-do lists, the worries about money, the petty arguments, and the things you were going to get to eventually are gone. What's left is just what's actually there. A father sits on the floor and reads his kids the same book they've asked for 100 times, and he knows every word. An old woman is in her garden with her hands in the soil, in the same spot she's planted flowers for 20 years. Two strangers stand on a bridge watching a river, and neither of them says anything. This isn't sadness. This isn't giving up. Researchers who work with the dying call it something like radical presence. When a person stops living slightly ahead of themselves, always planning for the next thing, and finally just lands in the moment they're actually in. Most of us almost never do that. We're always somewhere else in our heads, and then suddenly there's nowhere else to be. Here's the thing I keep coming back to after all of this research. None of what I just described requires the world to actually end. The clarity, the peace, the sudden understanding of what matters, the phone call you've been putting off, and the conversation you keep postponing are all available right now. Today. The neuroscience doesn't require a countdown, and the psychological shift doesn't require catastrophe. It just requires actually believing, not intellectually but in your gut, that time is finite. That the people you love won't always be there, and that today is not a rehearsal for some better day coming later. We know this. Every single one of us knows this. We just live like we don't. In 79 AD, when Vesuvius erupted and ash started falling on Pompeii, archaeologists found something strange when they excavated the city. A lot of the victims weren't running. They were sitting at tables, in their homes, in the middle of ordinary life. We don't know what they were thinking in those final moments, but we can see what they chose. They chose to stay where they were. They chose the familiar, they chose the present. So here's the question I'll leave you with. If you found out right now, today, that you had 1 hour left, who would you call? Where would you go? What would you finally say? And the harder question, why aren't you doing that already? Thanks for watching.